So I thought I'd make a few videos called Dumb Things People Say to Atheists, which will address a lot of those really stupid things people keep telling us about ourselves. We know what's wrong with them, at least on an intuitive level, but hopefully I, while having a bit of fun with them, can show you a few quick, easy ways to shoot them down in regular conversation. Now, by my own admission, I'm going to start by going after a bit of low-hanging fruit. And by low-hanging, I mean it's not even hanging at all, because it's long ago fallen off the branch and sat on the ground rotting. And, I don't know, it's all mushy and brown and caved in now, and there's like flies buzzing around it and stuff. You get the idea. So what, you might ask, is the point? Why do I even bother with this nasty old piece of ground fruit? Because theists still insist on picking it up and trying to shove it into our mouths. That's why. And they do so by saying things like,
"Doesn't it take more faith to be an atheist than to be a Christian?"
Yay, this one. So I've actually run into this claim a lot, as I'm sure most of you have. In fact, it came up several times in a recent Facebook conversation I had with a pastor I knew, who told me, "You say the laws of the universe neither prove nor disprove the existence of God, yet it takes more faith on your part to believe a cosmic accident set them into place." He then proceeded with a series of scientific challenges. Life is another challenge to the atheist. Explain the reproductive process of the desert horned toad, one of many examples. How can that evolve? It had to be created that way. There is no possible way it could evolve. Explain the shrinking sun in light of billions of years, the slowing of the rotation of the Earth. Explain the rotation of planets and moons that are spinning the opposite way. This buffoonery went on for a surprisingly long time, as he asked me to explain several other aspects of science. And when I clarified that I didn't think matter randomly exploded billions of years ago, he replied, "I was wrong to assume you believed the billions of years ago Big Bang theory." Which no, I didn't necessarily reject Big Bang, as much as I explained I don't take it on faith and don't believe his caricatured explanation of it. Although I am curious what an atheist believes as an alternative theory to creation or the Big Bang. Now let's ignore the fact that many of the items he brought up are either easily explainable by science or flatly false, and that every single one is a tired, predictable apologetic canard. That's all beside the point for the sake of this conversation. My issue is, why is he even asking me all these questions about science to begin with? And why should a person have to come up with an alternative to a scientific theory to justify not believing his specific religion? Seriously, let's think about this. In what other conversational context would it be appropriate to tell somebody a weird thing exists, then when they don't believe you, expect them to answer a bunch of questions about science to justify their lack of belief? For example, imagine a guy approaches you and tells you about interdimensional aliens from the planet Zordon. And when you say you don't believe in them, he gets all incredulous and asks how stars formed. Of course, you ask why the f*** he'd need you to explain such a thing, and he says that stars were formed when the Zardonians ignited blobs of fuel that were sitting in outer space. And thus, since you don't believe in Zardonians, you must believe the blobs of fuel just automatically lit themselves with no ignition source. Then he laughs and says it obviously takes more faith to believe fuel lights itself than that the Zardonians lit it, so you must have a ton of faith not to believe in interdimensional aliens from Zordon. Now we all, atheist and Christian alike, recognize that this is dumb and that we'd have every reason to reject this story without needing to explain any complex scientific concept. Why? Because without realizing it, our minds have been busy cataloging the body of objects and phenomena we've observed since infancy. It's from this that we get our general understanding of how the world works, what we should expect to see in the future, and which claims from other people we should consider worth our time and consideration. So when someone walks up and blurts out something about aliens without very strong evidence, we have every justified reason to tell them to f*** off and leave it at that. Further, we would recognize a few things. 1. Someone expecting you to answer complex questions about science before you disbelieve a specific claim they came up with is nonsense. What's more, it's presumptuous nonsense because, 2, it assumes, for no good reason, that the specific unproven thing they just made up should be seriously considered as a possible explanation for a scientific phenomena, and worst of all, 3. It demands that you choose sides in a false dilemma between their proposed guess about what happened and a ridiculously phrased alternative that they made up. You would know very well that the choice at hand is not between aliens igniting blobs of fuel and blobs of fuel igniting themselves, and that the person expecting you to make this choice had culled the possibilities down to these two options, either for reasons of manipulation or personal stupidity. What's more, you would know that putting a random layperson on the spot to explain star formation is totally inappropriate. You don't need knowledge of astrophysics to tell someone that you've never seen a crazy alien and thus don't believe in them, and when someone expects you to produce this knowledge, you should just reiterate your suggestion that they f*** off all the more emphatically. The parallels to Christian apologetics here are obvious. When a person says it takes more faith to believe the universe exploded out of nothing than that God created it, or any such version of this garbage, they are assuming that you should be responsible for knowledge on one of the most difficult questions science has ever faced. And worse, they're expecting you to choose between two weird options they just made up. One is a crazy, totally unsubstantiated story about a being with no body who spoke the universe into existence, and the other is a caricatured, flatly misrepresented description of the Big Bang. The Big Bang was not a literal explosion of matter, nor does the model explain or try to explain what came before the universe or how the universe came about. All it does is mathematically, and with very good reason based on astronomical observation, track the universe's matter to a single point from which it appears to have expanded. And this leads to probably the most fundamental issue at hand here. Science does not claim to answer all the questions about the universe. But the problem is that religions, including Christianity, expect to have all the answers, and thus make stuff up when they don't have actual answers. When it comes to the origin of the universe, each religion makes up its own story based on flat assumption. And they're so used to themselves and everybody else doing this that when an atheist says, "I don't think there's a God at all," Christians assume he must be making up his own guess about where the universe comes from, just like all the religions do. But atheism and science are not playing the same game as religions. They're doing something much more profoundly different than just throwing in a different guess, which is they're not making up guesses at all. They say, "We don't know, so let's wait to find a real answer before just making shit up," which is the only real way to address the problem and the actual thing that separates us from the religious. And doing this takes no faith whatsoever. So when a Christian says you do have faith, you can just calmly explain a few things. First, science does not need to account for where the universe came from. Second, you as a non-scientist certainly don't need to account for where the universe came from. What's more, you don't owe a Christian answers to questions on any scientific topic, including evolution, cosmology, or geology, to explain why you don't believe in an invisible being they told you about. And the person asking you about these sciences probably knows all about them anyway. And finally, nobody needs to choose between the Big Bang and God. Disbelieving God does not mean you make an alternative truth claim based on faith in the Big Bang. It means you react intelligently to the world as it presents itself to you without letting any hypothetical possibility dictate how you live. When you think about it, that's a pretty obvious way to do things, right? But it's clear that people who don't get this have spent so much time entrenched in their own religion that they've lost perspective on how to approach others or what to expect from them in conversation. Anyway, next time I'm going to talk about another dumb thing people say to atheists. Maybe it should be, I don't know, that we have no reason not to rape people? Because that's not a useless and insulting thing to say. A huge thank you once more to my patrons, including Council of Zod members SR Foxley and Q. I really appreciate all your support. I've conducted the drawing for the August prize, so hopefully we'll confirm with a winner soon. If any of the rest of you want to support me or otherwise follow me, the Patreon and social media links are below. Also, if you have any suggestions of dumb things people say to atheists that you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. Thank you, and Zod bless Krypton.